When most people think about car racing, all they see is a massive cost. Thousands, even tens of thousands just to try to be competitive. But what if I told you that there's a racing discipline where you can be competitive for just a few hundreds? Here in Croatia we have a discipline called OSV. I don't know if direct translation does it any justice, but let's just say that it's similar to British auto test. The basic premise of this discipline is that you have a course set by cones with certain actions that you need to complete, like knocking down the yellow control cone, stopping on the line, doing 180 or 360 in a box of cones, and etc. If you touch any of the cones, fail to do any of the actions or mess up the order, you get the time penalties accordingly. You have around 5 different courses in a day, and the one with the fastest total time wins. This is a very technical and low speed discipline where the precision and car control are the most important aspects. It's also a discipline where driver matters far more than the car. Therefore, there is no point in investing any kind of big money into cars. Cars are sorted into classes only by their length, which tells you everything. It's the only racing discipline where Peugeot 106 with 1.1 engine and Skoda Fabia R5 would be in the same class. And it's the only racing discipline where that Peugeot would probably win over the Skoda. In 2024 I tried this discipline for the first time with my Honda Civic EK sedan, just for fun. And fun it was, so much so that I got addicted. All it took was a couple of handbrake turns. This is honestly the racing discipline where I have the most fun. But that Civic sedan was way too big. 4.5 meters car in a discipline dominated by Fiat Seicentos. So for the season 2025 I decided to get something shorter. This is basically Mazda 121 produced under the license by Kia, famous by its indestructible engine and big rust problems. Why this car? Few reasons. First, a very calculated move. This car is short enough to be generally competitive, but also long enough to fit in the class 2. Second, a sentimental reason. Kia like this was my very first car. Third, a practical reason. I still had that shell with some parts I could use. And fourth, the car cost me 350 euros. First, as you do with any project, I started ripping things apart. Interior was gross, smelled horrible, so it had to go. I was really curious about what's under the carpet, and surprisingly, I have managed to find a chassis where someone put some money and effort to fix the rust problems. Well, it appears I got lucky. No rust. Somebody took care of this car before me, so I don't need to weld anything. Well, there's this small hole, but that's not unsolvable. When I disassembled everything, I started to prep the car for painting. I know, painting this car is a cost I didn't need, but I just had to make it presentable. Also, I wanted to try to paint that manga style, and this was a perfect car if it goes horribly wrong. So basically, 2 shades of yellow 2K paint and a black permanent marker on them. I also went with the most basic black base paint for the bumpers just because I thought they would look better in black. After finishing the paint, I moved to important things. When I was disassembling the car, I noticed that the seats were trash. They had some kind of plastic in the rails and the seats were incredibly wobbly. Not something I had planned for, but now I have to find some replacement seats. Since the original seats also have a terrible seating position for someone my height, I've decided to scavenge the seats from none other than the Civic. It took some cutting and welding, but I've managed to get them to bolt into original mounting spots. The shocks on the Kia were in bad condition. The car literally nosedived when you pressed the brake and looked into the sky when you accelerated. Luckily, my previous Kia had brand new shocks, well, brand new before the car was permanently parked 7 years ago. So I have decided that my next step is scavenging all the good parts from the old one, very gently. The car had to be lowered quite a bit, so you know what that means. The rear was quite simple. How much spring you cut transfers exactly into how much the car is lowered. The fronts were a bit trickier because of the preload, so I had to cut twice to get the desired height. Use the new shocks and combine that with the cut springs and the transformation was obvious. Also, I replaced the steering tie rods because I had brand new ones on the parts car. The car was almost ready for the test drive. All it needed was tires. Luckily for my budget, only the front tires need to be good, so I got two cheap non-Kang semi-slicks. As for the rears, the worse the tire, the better. I had a bunch of 13-year-old winter tires that were on these cars, which is just perfect. Loaded up the car and went for a test drive, just to see that the car runs and drives alright. I haven't given it a proper test, which in hindsight was a bad decision. You'll see why soon enough. Only thing that actually bothered me straight away was the steering. This car has no power steering, so the steering rack is quite long, which is a problem because I need quick steering response. I gambled and replaced the original steering wheel with a smaller aftermarket one to trade a bit of steering precision for a bit more steering speed. The car was pronounced ready and off we go for the first race. The day started on a happy note. The two artists from my club decided that my car isn't scribbled enough, so I gave them my markers and let them loose. The car was looking nice and that was pretty much the only nice thing about it. Immediately in the first run, the steering has shown to be too heavy. I literally couldn't steer it one-handed, at least not quick enough, which is crucial when you're doing handbrake turns in tight spots. I was slow, the driving looked terrible, and people say that it's pretty clear that I'm struggling with the steering. On top of that, in the third test, my rear left brake line burst wide open and I lost all the braking. Efforts were made to restore it somehow, at least in the fronts, but I couldn't do it in time and I had to quit for the rest of the day. I was pretty devastated, but when emotions cooled off, I cooked up a plan on how to fix and improve the car. So I basically had two big issues to fix. I needed to add some sort of power steering and I had to fix the rear brakes. The solution for power steering was pretty straightforward. I had an electric steering column from Opel Corsa laying around. These are a popular choice for EPS conversions, and even if I didn't have one, they are everywhere and can be bought for cheap. Kia's steering rack and Opel's steering column do not fit together, not even close. So I had to get creative. Basically, I took two columns, chopped them up and welded a new abomination together. This is definitely not how you should do this, so please don't try this at home. I also straight up welded the column to the car, so good luck to anyone who will need to take it out in the future. One electronic controller later and everything works perfectly. The only thing that isn't perfect is the position of the steering wheel. Since the regulations require that the original dashboard stays in the car, I had to compromise on how I will fit everything underneath it. This compromise resulted in steering wheel sitting about 5 to 10 centimeters lower than it should. Now for the brakes. I gave few options a thought and ended up deciding to not replace the existing lines, but to split the braking into two separate systems. I have plugged the rears on the brake pressure regulator, so I have only the fronts on foot pedal. As for the rears, a separate DIY hydraulic handbrake was installed, coupled together with a Honda clutch cylinder, sheet metal bracket and a square pipe as a handle. Spent so much time flaring the brake lines, I could do it with my eyes closed now. And off we go to the next event. Immediately on the first run, these fixes have shown to be absolutely amazing. I could finally steer the car and the addition of hydro handbrake just put the rotations to another level. However, there are still some issues with the car, but nothing major. The front brakes work, but applying the brake just feels very weird. I'm aware that I messed with the proportions on the valve when I removed rear brakes from it, but I didn't expect that the front brakes will suck that much now. The radiator fan decided that it doesn't want to work from the early morning, so I had to be careful to not overheat the car. This I learned after I slightly overheated the car, but luckily there seemed to be no permanent damage. Even despite these issues, I have managed to pick up some trophies. For the next race, I've tried fixing the brake pedal feel, but didn't really do anything. I had a spare radiator fan from the parts car, so I replaced that. and while I was already there, I have connected the radiator to a standalone relay which I connected to a switch, so I was now in full control of the fan. I finally decided to check the alignment the old string and rover way, and it was a disaster. I have managed to make some adjustments, and the car immediately felt more precise and responsive. And that was it, off to the next event. The car had pretty much no issues thankfully, only the known bad front brakes, and the clutch started to act up a little in the middle of the day. But all in all, this was my best event of the year, and this was my best run of the event. I have managed to claim 3rd place in the Class 2 and the 1st place among the beginners. But the most important thing is that the car was pretty much ready to run the next race. The next race was the last race of the season, and since I wasn't anywhere in the standings, I decided to just have as much fun as possible. And the fun I had, there's nothing I like more than pulling the handbrake and slamming the car into the rev limiter, even though that's not how you're supposed to drive when you're chasing the best time. The resume of the season is that the car is actually competitive and that I have to work a lot on my driving. But there's also still some improvements to be done to the car. Season 2025 was a DIY season with the goal of spending as little as I could. So all in all, including the projected cost of everything that I had just laying around, I spent just shy of 900 euros to drive this car, including the paint that isn't really necessary. For the season 2026, I could probably just drive the car as is, given the basic maintenance. But I'm willing to spend some money to improve it as much as I can.